Good morning, everyone, here at the Abbey, and also people that are joining remotely. Nice to see you here on the screen. But it is funny too when I look at that screen, I see the side of me. So it's another illusion. We'll talk about illusions a little bit today. So anyway, today I want to talk about koans in our practice. Koans in our practice. And there's a fair amount, I think, of confusion, misunderstandings about it. Some people view that, oh, that's a real cerebral kind of intellectual thing. I don't want to get into that. That's not something I'm comfortable with. I might get embarrassed working with them. A lot of different things. But anyway, let's back up for just a second. In the last month or so, we've heard some really wonderful talks to help deepen our practice. I know that made a real impact on me. As an example, Tetsudo spoke to us about shikantaza, about just sitting. But he also gave us some guidelines and really some technical, but very easy to understand technical explanations of the way we can sharpen our just sitting practice or just our meditation practice in general to have it be, to help our minds settle down more. So I know personally I find that very, very helpful. And then we've also been hearing talks on the Diamond Sutra from Roshi Shinko. And a couple things that really stood out for me too, and I think were helpful for me on the cushion, but also off the cushion, was this idea of, she said any number of times, about really immersing ourselves in our life, just immersing it. You know, of course, the metaphor, I guess, would be like a fish being in the ocean, but then, gee, but I gotta look for where the water is, you know, and they're just be so immersed in it that you don't even realize that you're there in one sense. It's just experiencing it. And then she also pointed out too, as an example, is how everything becomes so vibrant. It's like this, not just sentient beings, like all of you in the room and all of you all at home, but also the microphone, this cup. Everything has a liveliness, a vibrancy to it as we open up more and more to just what is, rather than putting our own spin on everything. And this relates relates a lot to what I'm going to talk about, because koan practice really is about, and our practice in general, but koan, whether it's shikantaza or counting our breath or observing our breath, or I can say koan practice, whatever shikantaza, it all is helping us take away the buffer, if you will, between our life, our experience, and what is really going on here. Because it's so easy for me to think, well, here I am, I'm giving a talk today, and yeah, I don't know if I can remember what I'm going to say, and okay, I got to talk about koans, and I'm just up in my head like this, right? And then I'm kind of, my throat's dry, I get a drink of water. And in reality, you know, the really reality is I don't have to get a drink of water at all. That's it. I can do that, right? I don't have to conceptualize all this stuff, right? Rightly or wrongly, I can flap my gums today, and then at some point I can leave, and it isn't really very hard. And hopefully I'll add something of value. Maybe I will, well, maybe I won't. Don't really have any control over that, other than I'll share things that I think have been helpful for me in my practice. And I wanted to say, when talking about koan practice, keep in mind this is one person's experience with koans. And I did go, you know, studied, went through whatever 750 koans or something like this, and did it over a number of years. And I certainly struggled mightily at times, and at other times it didn't seem like so much of a struggle. But the point is, it's something that I think can really offer something and really strengthen our practice, but it's not for everybody, okay? Some people learn better by reading. Some people learn better by listening. Some people are experiential learners. Other people are more theoretical learners. So it kind of depends. So it would make sense to me that not everybody is going to utilize the same approach to their practice, to their same approach to really kind of see what's going on here, what the reality is. Koans might be good for me. Shikantaza might be really good for me. Counting my breath, observing my breath, whatever. They're different different approaches that we can use. Practice is rich that way. But I also would want to emphasize that, like, that for me, before I get into koans more, I didn't do koans to the exclusion of these other things. I counted my breath for years. I still count my breath at times, right? Observed my breath throughout that time too. I did shikantaza practice through the years as well. And we'll talk about that a little bit, because those tools are very, very helpful. They were for me in my koan practice as well, because having more clear mind, a quieter mind, was helpful with dealing with some of the questions that came up in koan practice. So I would like to emphasize that I don't think it's appropriate to think of it. You can have koan practice, you can have shikantaza, you can count your breath, you can observe the breath, and these are all separate entities. I think they all have something to offer us in deepening our practice. And ultimately, the thing I was very interested in was to be able to see more clearly the reality of what's going on in life, as opposed to my being up in my head, which I was so much of the time, and not being able to really, and missing what was really going on. So to back up just a bit, so what is really a koan anyway? It's a question that's asked, and the idea of the question is you're not going to be able to just solve it with your thinking mind. That's not going to work very well. And so, and it's to get at very significant existential questions. For example, who am I? What am I? What's the meaning of life? Where did I come from? Who was I born? Who was I before I was born? Who am I going to be after I die? Those they're big ticket items, big questions, right? So how we get at them. So it's not surprising that with koan practice, the idea is that we're not going to use the same approaches that we use to the rest of our life, particularly in koan practice. We're going to have to see things a little bit differently. So I want to give you a few examples of that here in a second. But I will just to throw out how these koans can't necessarily be addressed with our thinking mind. A really famous one that is the koan mu. And the question that comes up is, does a dog have Buddha nature? And the answer is mu. Okay, so how would you like it? You get that as your koan. It's kind of hard to work on if you aren't thinking a little bit different. So how do you even begin to start on these? And some other well-known koans are, what's the sound of one hand? Okay, what's the sound of one hand? I mean, that is kind of hard to wrap my head around conceptually. How would I stop the ringing of the distant temple bell? Another one. Okay, well, what's going on there? Okay, so these kinds of questions and trying to get our arms around or head around them, it's not necessarily real obvious by any stretch. So when I first started doing koan study, I heard someone told me, another student actually told me, and I don't know if they'd really worked on koans or not. I'm guessing they hadn't, but they're no longer practicing here. But they said, well, what you need to do to work on a koan is you just let your mind go blank. Just let your mind go blank, and then just wait for the answer to pop up in your mind. And I'm like, well, okay, I'm glad that works for you. That certainly didn't work for me. And still doesn't as I revisit koans and koans of my life, etc. Haven't found that to be helpful. And I think that my guess is usually, and I've heard some other people say that too, and I think people that do that probably haven't worked on them very much. But then it does beg the question, so how do we work on koans? So I want to just first mention that, well, one thing we can do is as far as not using your thinking mind at all, I don't think that works. You have to use your mind a little bit. So you read the koan, maybe reflect on it just for a little bit, like, wow, how do I stop the ringing of the distant temple bell? Ringing of the distant temple bell, oh. Then I kind of just think about it, maybe have an image of that in my mind, okay, but not burn a lot of brain cells right now on trying to figure that out. Just realize I'm not going to exactly just figure that out, but I'm just going to kind of visualize what's going on there, and then sit. Go into my cushion maybe, and sit for a while, and maybe I do shikantaza, like Tetsudo was was talking to us about. Or maybe I follow my breath or count my breath. Okay, but just kind of in the back of in my back of my mind, I might kind of have that going on, that koan. And maybe not. Maybe I won't even think about it again for a while. And what I'd compare this to a little bit is, I don't know how many of you do crossword puzzles, okay? This is a real banal example, so sorry, but I do crossword puzzles, so it came to mind for me. And so you're doing crossword puzzles, and I'm going through it, and I'm doing pretty well or whatever. And then there's this one crossword clue, and it's like 4 across, 5-letter word ending in E, and the clue is pithy statement. Pithy statement. I'm like, what the heck is that? And I can't get it. I can't get it from the other clues, or I just can't get it. So I get a little frustrated. So what do? I just don't throw the newspaper out. Boy, I'm dating myself there. Newspaper, but don't throw the crossword away, and just maybe go out and take a walk, or maybe just chat it up with a friend of mine. So just forget about it. Just forget about it, right? And then, not infrequently, not always, but not infrequently, then I come back to it a few hours later, and it's like, terse. That's the word, terse. 5-letter word, ends in E. I'll bet that's it. Put it in there, right? Now, and that, I'm sure we've all had experiences kind of like that, whether with crosswords or not. Or maybe, like I know some of you do writing or write poetry, and maybe you wake up in the morning and you've had an idea of kind of the story you wanted to write or the poem you wanted to write or whatever, and then some things maybe you're just sitting on the cushion counting your breath or something in the morning, and then something comes up like, oh, wow, I need to write this down. And you may be kind of torn, like, well, should I write it down right now, or should I keep with my meditation, So sometimes I'll have a little sheet of paper next, just if I really feel like I just really have to, it's so important that I write this down, then maybe I write something down on the paper and come back to it. So it's interesting how our minds work. I don't necessarily understand it, but it's kind of interesting. So I bring that up just because to kind of get started on it, just have the idea of look at whatever koan you're working on. And another koan that people work on a lot, which is a wonderful koan, it's very helpful in our life and so applicable, is who am I? Who am I? And just kind of run that by in your mouth and then go about your day. But maybe occasionally just think about, who am I? I'm drinking this water, or who am I? I'm talking with you. Just kind of think about it in life, like who am I? Who. You can just cut it back to just two. But just again, so the idea here, the initial technique that can be helpful with working some of these koans is just to, kind of memorize what the thing is, but you don't have to recount, you don't have to repeat it over and over. For some koans that could be helpful, but you don't have to do that necessarily, but you just kind of have it in mind and be aware of it, like as an example, is who am I koan, who. And maybe on the cushion, maybe you are going who, different strokes for different folks. Or maybe you're doing shikantaza, but just have that in the back of your mind, and things may have some insights about that. But I wanted to mention that one of the things about koan study is, and I'm going to come back to some real life kind of examples, is it tends to be, for me it was, incremental. Now I had certain koans that when I'd work on it, like Who Am I as an example, were particularly impactful in my life as I began to experience that more, maybe in a deeper way. And of course I still work with that all the time. Who am I? But so some of them have more of maybe a profound impact on one's life. But the key thing is it takes a lot of persistence, because you can get frustrated. I worked on one koan for over 2 years, okay, the same koan. And so that's not exactly making my ego feel great about, okay, well, I've been working on 2. I think that person over there, I bet you they got bad in 1 week. It's taken me 2 years. Those kind of thoughts could go through, and it's not particularly helpful. But over time, sticking with it, doing these things, as I mentioned, the whole idea here is to take away the way our conception of how we view reality from what really is going on with reality, right? That's the idea. We want to see more clearly. I think that could be the way to avoid suffering, is I'm not adding my stories to it. So koans are a technique that are nudging us in the direction of not just getting lost in our conceptual thought. Because I would just rhetorical question here, but how's it worked for you so far, having all this conceptual thought? It doesn't tend to be a make for real happy folks, and you get I struggled with anxiety much of my life. Some people struggle with depression, whatever it is. And a lot of the stuff, there's biochemical roots to some of it, but at the same time, much of it comes from our just streaming of these stories and concepts we have, and it set us up for suffering, pain and suffering, right? Okay, so let me give you an example or two about some of the maybe kind of what can go on with a koan, but also how a person can get trapped if in not find koan practice very helpful. By the way, I would say before we go on, having a teacher is incredibly helpful if a person is going to do koan practice. Buddha obviously worked out pretty well for him. I don't think he probably did koan practice back then. But the point is, it's something that it really helps to have a teacher, because we can all get stuck, and the teacher can help us see, oh, I'm getting stuck, I'm getting off in the weeds here, or I just don't even understand what the heck this koan means at all, and they can give some suggestions, some hints, some things that can get us back on track in the right way. So that I would say is a real important thing before I go on. But let me talk to you about this idea I was mentioning about seeing our life without filters on, without filtering it through our stories, but experiencing things more directly. I'm going to mention a story that I've mentioned before, but I think it's particularly relevant in helping us understand about koan practice and where we're going with this. And this is the example about, drinking orange juice. Okay, so if I said, if I wanted to, let you know how much I know about orange juice, but I'd actually never had any orange juice. I never drank orange juice, but I just said, I want to become the world expert on orange juice. And so I start studying up on it. I look at the turbidity of orange juice, the specific gravity of orange juice, the amount of sugar that was in orange juice. I look at Valencia orange juice made from Valencia oranges in Florida at a certain time of the year, and then I looked at oranges that come from South America. I just did all this study in orange juice, but I never actually I never drank orange juice, but I just became this world knowledge, have this some expertise in it. So some people might be impressed with me. They think, man, that Yugen, he really does know a lot about orange juice. Pretty impressive. But if you really ask me, but what does it taste like? I'd say, well, it's kind of sweet. Sometimes it can be a little tart, but that'd just be stuff I'd read in a book, right? But then if you said, well, hey, Yugen, why don't you I got some orange juice right here. Nothing against all the lifetime of work you've done on learning about orange juice, but have a sip. And I just go, okay, now I know it. As much as I can know something, that's it. And even now, as I think back on it, that's an image of it. But for that, I did experience it directly at one point in my life, right? Okay, that's this idea of like koan study is taking away our conceptual, habitual thinking and starting to give us a situation that will nudge us in the direction of direct experience. Like for me, drinking the orange juice right there. And let me tell you, if we didn't have the koan thing, let me give you an example of how easy it is to get lost. And without a teacher, how easy it is to get lost in koan practice. And then I'll come back to some examples of how helpful that can be. But one thing is, I talked about the crossword puzzle a little bit, and that you plant this kind of seed and you look at it and then you get away from it, settle your mind down, come back. Sometimes things work out. Well, that can be very helpful with koan practice, but that type of thing. But let's say that you, and we all do here, we all speak English. But let's just say that you spoke English fluently, but you had never learned a particular um, idiom within English. So, for example, I told you that your koan is going to be to find out what this means, piece of cake. And you'd never heard the idiom that this is a piece of cake. I just gave you that as a koan. I go, okay, Futai, why don't you work on piece of cake, give it your best shot, come back and see me in a week, okay? We'll do a dokusan. And so he's like, piece of cake? Well, I know what a piece of cake is. There's chocolate cake, there's pineapple upside down cake, there's, all kinds of these different cakes, right? There's small cakes, big cakes, cupcakes, right? Cake pops, pop cakes, all kinds of stuff. And so she could really start doing it. So she comes back, she comes in the dokusan room, and I said, are you ready to present your koan? I think you were doing a piece of cake, right? She said, yeah. And she comes up and she goes, yeah, what I did was turns out there's a lot of different kinds of pieces of cake. And she presented all this to me, and then I hit the bell and I go, sorry, not right, not right. And so try again. But what she was doing, which in a way was totally brilliant, was she was trying to figure out examples of this piece of cake, right? But what she wasn't aware was there's another way of looking at that phrase, piece of cake. It means easy peasy, right? Another idiom. It just means really simple. And that's the answer I wanted to get. That's what I wanted her, not that I want to get the answer, it's what I want her to experience. That this piece of cake, she looked at life a different way than she had before. Well, what about when you're working on a koan? When you first get this koan, like, how do I stop the ringing of the distant temple bell? What if you're looking at it like just piece of cake, just without the idiom, but just piece of cake, right? You could work on, if you just think of, okay, I know temple bell, and I know the distance, and I know it's way off there, and I know what it means to stop. Let me see. Oh, and then I'll come back in a week and I'll present it. Okay, but you're still in your conceptual thought, like in this fictitious example, Futai was with this piece of cake example, because she was looking at it from a classic way of thinking, not a different way, from a different perspective. Okay, so if you do that, you're not. If you always keep looking at your life and looking at life, what's going on with the same set of conceptual tools that you have up until this point, no wonder these koans are going to seem hard. But you know what? They're not hard. They're actually pretty simple. But you've got to start getting nudged by some of these questions you're going to be asked to think, or not think, you could say also, in a different way. To think or not think in a different way. And then some things will seem a little bit less confusing in life as you move along. And it doesn't, we all hear stories, and, some people have very profound awakening experiences. They don't have to get it in koan study. They may not even practice Zen, but they'll just have I've known people that have had a very deep awakening experience at some other time in their life that really profoundly affected them, right? They weren't Zen students at all. And so it can happen all kinds of different ways, but this koan study can get us thinking in a different way and not thinking in a different way, to where we're able to see things from a different vantage point. And it doesn't mean that all your problems in life are going to go away. It doesn't mean that you're going to become, as the example I think from Bernie Glassman was, it doesn't make you a better basketball player or something, right? But it doesn't solve all of life's issues, but will affect the way you view what you earlier thought of issues a little bit, right? Another thing I wanted to mention is there's hundreds of these koans, and you can work on one. You don't have to do 700 koans, okay? In fact, you can only work on one at a time anyway, right? So if you get one of them, and I say get, if you have some kind of intimate experience with a koan, who cares? If you do 10 of them, or you do 50, or you do 750. The point is, it's affecting the way you see the world. It's affecting and decreasing the amount of buffer you have between you and your direct experience, right? Not filtering everything so much. You're experiencing it, right? So whatever, stuff's still going to happen, but you don't have to, you won't be in the habit of always conceptualizing and experience things more directly. Let me give you an example here that I heard about. This is a real life situation of, no, anyway, I don't know if people can see this. This is a chair. I don't know if you can see that or not, but I got a chair here. Okay, this is a real life example of a person that experienced in hospice. I used to work in hospice. And this was a woman who had fairly recently lost her husband of many years. Okay? And she said in a support group after her husband died that one of the things that just was particularly difficult for her on a daily basis with when her husband died is that she'd be at the breakfast table in the morning and she'd look over and she'd see this chair like in this room, which hopefully you can see at home, just this empty chair. It'd just be this empty chair. And it just, she said, it just tears me up. She said that is one of the most difficult aspects in the way I'm grieving, is being reminded every day from that empty chair. And she was suffering greatly, you know. There were tears, of course, in her eyes telling the story. And then she said, but then something came up for me, and here's what happened. She just got in the chair. And you can say, well, she got in the chair, big deal. She was the chair. She was the husband that she lost. She was all of that. Right? And she didn't have to tell us about all that. She just told us that she got in the chair. In fact, she just demonstrated it too, like I'm doing. Oh, you know, wow. You see how you can't put that into words, right? You can't put that into words. And that's why these koans that you're working on, as you let go and as you supplement with practices like Tetsudo talked about, and ways to quiet our mind down more using some of those shikantaza techniques, or like I say, it can be counting breath, it could be observing your breath, it could be focusing in on sounds, you know, all kinds of things. But as they're different, these different techniques, but koan practice is what I'm talking about today, focusing on, can help us see things in a different way, like that woman who was not a Zen student, was not Buddhist, whatever. She just had this insight. Where the heck did that come from? She didn't know. She just did it, okay? One of the things that I already touched on, I want to mention again is it is really helpful to have a teacher. I'm not trying to, you don't have to do it, but it's really helpful if you want to do the koan thing. And you don't have to do koan practice in order to have a profound practice that greatly affects your life and the life of others and the world for that matter. You do not have to do it at all. And it's not like koan's going to give you more of an experience. It's like it's not about you having any experience at all anyway. It's just about being this life, being this moment, being this more in touch, being this reality. That's what it's about. And any of these different approaches can work for you. But throwing yourself into it, as Shinko said, immersing yourself and realizing that at some point, how can you not be immersed? We really are kind of like this fish in the water, in the ocean, that's just looking for the water, the ocean. We're already here. Just open up to it, right? Not be pushing these things away. And another thing I wanted to mention about koan practice is it's not something in my experience. It's not something to do just on the cushion. It's something you want to take off the cushion. So as you work on a koan, or you get so-called passed on a koan, so you say, well, go ahead and go on to the next koan. Okay, but what did you really feel what that's all about? And can you continue to feel that now? Like the sound of the ringing of the distant temple bell. Can I feel it right now? What that's all dealing with? At some point. Otherwise, if you just have these transient experiences and they're not really transformative at all, like what the heck good is it? So anyway, another thing about koans is kind of I certainly didn't anticipate when I started doing that, was that it gives you some very real life skills on dealing with our daily lives, and not just because of insights maybe you have from your koan practice, but from doing the koan practice itself in different ways. So for example, I've presented koans before. Like I mentioned, I worked on one koan for over 2 years. So how many times did I go into Dokusan and not be able to present it in a way that was viewed as capturing the spirit of the koan? Well, quite a few. I can tell you that over a couple of years. I don't know how, but it was a lot. And so I remember one time, going in there, and I was like, I was just frustrated, and I'm like, I can't get this, and I remember starting to leave, and then, Roshi Shinko said, come on, you're, I can't remember what she said, but it was something kind of encouraging or something a bit, and I, but I was like, I had tears coming to my face. I was like, I wanted to bawl, but I don't think I did that, but I definitely had tears coming to my face. And then I said, I just can't get this, okay? I don't get it right now. I'm okay that I don't get it, but if I never get it, I'm not going to quit. But I just really frustrated. And so that was sort of an epiphany for me that I would be okay, even if I didn't get it, and I wasn't going to quit my practice. But it was that. But I was pushed into a very uncomfortable area through this koan work that I otherwise probably wouldn't have experienced in my Zen practice quite like that. And that was helpful to me, and still is helpful to me as I think back on that, is that, life's not always easy, okay? And I've had a very easy ride, being a person of privilege in so many ways, having parents that love me, all these kind of things, and so I don't think it's all bad to sometimes get tweaked a little bit and have to deal with that, right? As far as real life goes. One thing when talking about the number of koans, though, there's a bunch of them, but the key thing is that they're all many of them are very, very similar. They're all really driving around the same thing of seeing more clearly what's going on in reality, but they're looking at it as Shishin Roshi mentioned to me, they're looking at it from different angles. So just imagine the metaphor used, you've got like this beautiful gem, but you're going to look at it from 750 different angles. The light passes through it a little different. Not quite the same gem when you look at it from here as when you look over there, kind of like that with koan study. Okay, I think I've prattled on long enough, and what I'd like to do is open it up, and feel free to ask any to share anything you want. If you have a question, please ask away, and don't pull any punches. Just anything if you think your experience, however it's been with koans or not, or if you still have questions about what even a koan is or anything like that, fire away, and we can learn from each other. Okay. So, thank you. We'll get started with that.
Tetsudo Sensei.
Yeah, I'd just like to speak to that a little bit. One of the first assignments I give university students when they come to my meditation classes, once we've done a couple of weeks of sitting, I ask them to go away and notice moments of self-consciousness or embarrassment and come back and present them to the class. And it's such a rich thing because nothing is harmed when we're embarrassed. We think something is being harmed, but it's not really. You know, it can feel like a kick in the stomach. We all know that feeling, right? But it's such great practice because it's one of the places where we see the ego so clearly, right? It's nothing is harmed except our self-image. And especially in the context of something like Doksan, or the way we set it up in my classroom, which is much the same. It's a very safe space. There's absolute containment in that we don't discuss what happens in class outside of class. And, you know, we have the opportunity to just go, here I am a human being. Human beings experience these kinds of defensive structures where we want to defend our self-image. Isn't that interesting? I mean, in a certain way, that's the whole core of the examination of the self that we do in Zen practice. So there we get to see, what am I protecting? I'm here with my teacher. I trust my teacher, you know. Of course, I respect my teacher, so I want them to think well of me. But the truth is, they're not going to think any more poorly or better of me for being embarrassed. You know, they've been through the same thing themselves. You know, they've tried to present a koan a bunch of times and gotten it wrong. So what's actually being harmed here? What am I actually protecting? There's nothing to protect. So we start to get, obviously in a semester of school, we don't get to the depths of what the self is. But what we do often get is, hey, I don't have to shy away from this feeling of discomfort. It doesn't kill me. You know, I used to be really embarrassed whenever I approached somebody who I was attracted to. And so what do we do when we feel embarrassed? I wouldn't be able to talk to them. I wouldn't be able to get my breath. I'd go weak in the knees, all this stuff. And then I would flee the situation. And as I was fleeing the situation, I would be telling myself, oh, I'm such an idiot, I'm such a loser, no, you know, what's wrong with me, all these things that we say. And I finally just realized that, yeah, it took me a while till I was in my mid-20s, but I finally just realized I could just tell the person that I get shy when I'm around somebody who I'm attracted to. And if they'll just wait a minute, I'll be able to talk. And then once I'm able to talk, maybe they'll even find I'm kind of nice. I think you'll like me if you could just like wait this out. I can't really get my words. It totally worked. All of a sudden I could do relationship, you know. And all I had to do was admit my vulnerability. You know, every once in a while somebody would think, oh, he's a jerk and walk off. But you don't want to know that person anyway. 9 times out of 10, a person actually finds it charming that you show your vulnerability, you know. They know exactly what it's like. But it doesn't occur to us not to cover up. It doesn't occur to us to just say, hey, I'm a human, I'm embarrassed. And the thing is, if you don't flee the situation and start beating yourself up in your head, the main thing is to look at what you're doing in your head when you leave. Oh, I'm a loser, I'll never get Koans. There's 750 of them, I've only gotten one of them. No, I haven't even gotten one. Yugen's so much better than I am. Look, he's practically enlightened already. I'm never going to be able to do this practice. All that proliferation is just like, oh, I feel embarrassed. How long? It's a set of physical feelings that will pass in about a minute. That's what I finally discovered. If I keep talking to this person I like, in about a minute I'll be able to talk. I'll get my, you know, all these feelings will pass, and I don't have to tell myself what an idiot I am. You know, I'm engaged in the interaction. So, you know, we start to get some distance on ourselves. We're not so identified with this feeling that comes up. This feeling comes up, oh, this is horrible, this is a problem. No, this feeling comes up, oh, how interesting, I'm a human being, I'm having this set of feelings. Oh, what's this like? Oh, you know, now that I'm looking at it and I'm not freaking out, oh, it's already gone. You know, so it's this opportunity to, the feeling of embarrassment becomes a poem in itself. How many times do we avoid a situation because we feel self-conscious or embarrassed? You know? And when people start to be willing to take it on, like I see in my university class, next thing you know, they're doing things they were scared to do. Oftentimes it's the thing that calls them so deeply. They want to do that more than anything else. So of course it's a big deal. It's like they realize, oh, I go into this, I feel uncomfortable, and then that passes. The world opens up. So, hope that's helpful. Something I've been through a lot. I used to be really shy. So I know, I've been through it top to bottom.
Thanks, Tetsudo. That's really helpful. And it also brings up a point, too, for me, which is whether a person is doing formal Zen koan practice or not, they're still, if they have a dedicated practice, they're going to be doing koan work because they're dealing with life koans like you're talking about. They're dealing with their own shame. They're dealing with these feelings that I'm not good enough. They're feeling what, and the other thing is, but they're doing it in a quite safe environment with a lot of support. And as you were alluding to, when we're in Dokusan, teachers in Dokusan, they have no agenda as far as trying to make you feel bad or do anything. They're quite the opposite, hopefully just sitting there very much in emptiness, listening to whatever any of you have to say, and there's really not a separate teacher even being there. And of course there's not a separate student really being there either. But when things then get triggered or whatever, it's a student getting triggered or whatever, as you say, having that as a rich opportunity to explore and realize that, hey, have I been harmed here? I think that's such a wonderful way to think of it, like you were saying, and then what is there that could harm me, and what is there in me that can be harmed, etc. Anyway, thanks a lot, but I just wanted to emphasize too that in Dokusan, it is, you got nothing to prove or be that you're not already, and if you're angry in Dokusan yourself, you have a right to be angry. If you're sad, if you're blissful, whatever it is, you can bring all that, because that's what you are in that moment,
Your teacher's not sitting there judging you,
right.
Thinking, that Koan, she's embarrassed. What is wrong with her?
Right.
Everybody who comes into Dokusan is sometimes embarrassed or self-conscious, and the teacher's been through being embarrassed or self-conscious.
Right.
So there's no judgment there. Everything that comes up that makes it a problem is in our own heads and hearts.
Right. Thank you. So I think the thing I found in my practice is just through koan work is more and more of a most genuine feeling of not knowing. I'm never going to figure these things out. And again, I can have the drink of orange juice. I get that kind of knowing. But to kind of have the knowing that I think I was expecting to get when I first went into this path, not quite that clear. More of a not knowing thing that I'm okay with in the way I look at things, rather than a certainty. Still plagued by this, not a square inch to walk on or sit on, not being able to really get away from that, and being able to accept that rather than feeling that, I'm going to nail this thing, I'm going to have it all figured out. Anyway. So.